VocalEye Almost Live Zoom. Stories of the Past and Future. Hosted by Amy Amantea. With special guest, Christine Malec.
Welcome everyone to this evening's Almost Live event. My name is Amy Amantea. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director here at VocalEye. I'm your host for these online events, and I am a member of our wonderful community. Wonderful community. You folks make my Wednesday nights exceptionally special. And I can't thank you enough for that. It's even more special when I get to see you all in person, and some of you more often than others, but thank you for being a part of my Wednesday. Thank you for being here. Thank you for just what you offer to the community. We've got lots of advocates in the space that are trailblazing. We've got lots of other folks doing various things, educating, and there's so much that we do that it's nice to come together and enjoy some accessible art. So thanks for your time, your lovely testimonial letters, your donations, and for telling people to come and join us. Come join us on this VocalEye Almost Live adventure. If you're somebody who happens to be joining us already on our YouTube channel, thank you very much for that. We sincerely hope that you like and subscribe and let other people know about it, and sign up for our newsletter through vocaleye.ca and keep track of what we're doing. We got some pretty cool stuff going on. VocalEye is broadcasting to you all from the traditional and unceded or stolen lands of the Coast Salish peoples, in particular the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. So I'm thinking, as I always do, about what we're offering this evening in our space, and past and future came up in the title, as you may all remember. So I thought I would do a little bit of research on the types of things that Indigenous communities think about when they think about future. And of course, this is there isn't a single Indigenous worldview, but I want to pull a few things out that I read, because many Indigenous cultures share values that differ, of course, but also have lots of values in common for long-term perspective, community building, and that's a bit different from the Western society that we may live in. So here are some of the the most common things that appear across many Indigenous nations in terms of a worldwide view. So the future includes the next generations. One of the most well-known teachings comes from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And they often refer to this as the 7 generations principle. While interpretations may vary from one Indigenous community to the other, the idea is that the decisions that are made today should consider how they will impact people's 7-year generation, 7 years into the future. I thought that was incredible. So the decision I make today, how does that impact my children, my grandchildren, my grandchildren's children? Because some of the decisions we make today are quite big. This encourages questions such as, will this leave the land healthier or more damaged? Will our descendants have what they need? What legacy are we creating? One of the other common pillars is that time is often seen as cyclical rather than linear. So many Indigenous cultures understand time through cycles, the changing of seasons, life, death, and renewal. Ceremonies and reconnecting people with teachings year-round as part of those circles and cycles. So rather than seeing history as something that is left behind in the past and in the present, the future, these things are all interconnected. The lessons of ancestors continue to guide today's decisions. And then the next pillar that's common is that ancestors and future generations are both present in decision making. Think about that one. Ancestors and future generations are both present in decision making. So many Indigenous peoples speak of standing beside those who came before them and who are yet to come. This creates a responsibility to honor ancestors, to care for those living today, and protect the lives of future generations. Rather than asking, what do I want? The question often becomes, what is my responsibility? And then pillar number 4 is the future is based on relationships. So instead of seeing humans as separate from nature, many Indigenous worldviews emphasize that there's a reciprocation between relationship and the land, water, plants, animals, and one another. The future depends on the maintaining of these relationships rather than simply extracting resources. And number 5, planning for the future includes cultural continuity. Looking ahead as not only about economic growth or technological advancements, it's also involving and ensuring that language survives, that ceremonies continue, that traditional knowledge is passed on to the young, that young people know who they are, and communities remain connected to their territories. Often one of the most powerful ideas many non-Indigenous people have taken from the Indigenous worldview is a simple shift in perspective. And here's the shift. When making an important decision, imagine that your grandchildren's grandchildren will live with its consequences. What choices would you make then? That perspective encourages long-term stewardship, humanity, and responsibility, values that are increasingly influential in fields such as sustainability, conservation, governance, and accessibility planning. So I love how I found that piece about connecting to accessibility planning too, because we just had a little chat about that before we hit record. So friends, that's what I'm offering to you this evening in my land acknowledgement and how it relates to our content. So a big welcome to you on this Wednesday, July where are we today? We are indeed July 15th already. I cannot believe it. And tonight we're here to offer you our almost live episode number 223 with our friend Christine Malec in the space. So stories from the past and future with Christine Malec. Come on in, Christine. How are you tonight?
Hello, I'm very well, very happy to be here, back with the family.
Back with the family, joining us from the future.
From the future. See, it's all about the future.
It's all about
the future. Yes. I'm in Toronto, so I'm 3 hours ahead. It's true.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. What have you been up to recently?
Summer's all about music for me. So, music festival last weekend, music festival coming up. I've been doing a lot of busking. One of my side hustles. I don't have any side hustles. All my hustles are in the middle. I play music in the TTC in the subway. So, I've been doing quite a bit of that. We had, as you did as well in Vancouver, we had some FIFA games here, and so there was a lot of uh hubbub in the city, a lot of people, a lot of new people. So I got out in not in the football, soccer areas so much, but there's just a lot of people around. So it's been a good time for playing music and listening to music too. I seem to land at a live performance at least once a week. It's pretty darn great. It's pretty great. Living in a city, it's a trade-off, right? It can be smelly and noisy and crowded, but there's also so many opportunities for arts and culture. So the last few months for me have been all about the music, and we've been having a lot of amazing described cultural stuff here too. JJ Hunt has led a few described walks, and the Luminato Festival finished up in June. That was there was several live performances that were Penn and Teller described, amazing. First time magic show, very rare to have audio description there. So yeah, I'm living the urban life, Amy. I'm living the urban life.
Good for you. Penn and Teller is great. I remember seeing them when I was blessed with the gift of eyesight, I suppose, is really the only way to do that. If you well, I'm still blessed with many gifts, having not a lot of sight, but being able to understand what sleight of hand looks like
It's yeah.
Is something I keep in my memory as because
Oh,
it's really hard to describe.
it really is.
It's really hard
Yeah.
to describe. So the and it's not the actual movement that's hard to describe, but the sense of wonder that it puts in your brain
Mm-hmm.
is what's hard to
Mm-hmm.
describe, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can describe somebody reaching into their coat and whatever, and they pulled up,
Yeah.
but like what a cool thing it would be, I think, to have a group of blind folks together with a musician that like shows you the back end of it, how the trick works, where this is
Yeah.
located. So when I lift the hat, it's a rabbit, but when I don't lift that, like then it's a ball. Like how are
Yeah.
they doing that? It's
I
all
yeah.
hidden in their
I
world, right? And
I have a little daydream of engaging with a magician and having them design a show for blind and partially sighted people because
mhm,
that sense of all of the components are about, as you say, awe and wonder and also misdirection and
misdirection.
show personship. And I feel that there's a way to do that for blind and low vision people, but not being a magician myself. I don't know what that is, but it's one of my little daydreams that someday we'll find a magician who's engageable to experiment with that because it's a little like dance, isn't it? It's you
Yeah.
can describe it, and the best describer in the world can sort of bring you in, but there's an essence that's it's always going to be very, very elusive. So yeah,
Yeah, and you're right. You're never gonna get a 100% parallel experience.
yeah, yeah.
But to get an experience that feels equitable would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and JJ did a great job of that. And I kind of walked away thinking, oh gosh, I could write a whole essay on this, but the show, I'm going to go with men because they're both men. The showmanship was I didn't like I was in awe of how they did it. I didn't love all of their techniques, but when you
Mm.
just watch someone doing what they do and making it a show and entertaining you despite yourself in a certain sense, it was quite extraordinary. Yeah, so
Sounds
lots of
like
stuff
that's the
going on.
Describers Cafe conversation.
Oh, please. Oh,
Yeah.
that would be so great. Have you done one on Stage Magic?
No, but I think we should start with the two of you
Oh,
experiencing stage magic. So
oh,
yeah,
that would be very
stay tuned.
provocative
Yeah,
conversation.
stay tuned. Awesome. So Christine, what are we doing tonight?
We're taking a whirlwind tour through space and time. So another one of my pursuits is being a writer of a couple of novels and a bunch of short stories. And my genres of choice in reading and writing are historical fiction and science fiction. And so I have this evening I've brought uh, three short stories and two original songs. Anyone who's been in the space before and has heard me talk about music might remember that I compose songs with slowly, let's say slowly. So one a year, maybe. So my original songs are rare, but I've brought three short stories and two original songs to share, and they all span a wide range in space and time because those are the genres that I enjoy.
Cool. I'm so excited about that. So what would you like to do to jump into what you're sharing first? You want to
Shall we
that?
dive in? Yeah. So
Yeah.
the first story, it's called A Wider Stream. Now, this story is set in 16th century France, and in fact, it's a prequel to the first novel that I wrote. The novel's called Beltane, and the novel tells the story of a young woman who's bartered into an arranged marriage, but and sort of her coming of age and what happens to her and some of the politics and religion of the time. And I wrote this short story as a prequel and submitted it to the National Federation of the Blind's short story contest and was totally chuffed that I won. I was very, very
Ooh,
surprised by that. So, what you were going to hear is was it's about 18 minutes long, 18, 19 minutes long, and it's me reading the short story. So it's set in Bordeaux, France, which is the south of France, very moderate climate, known for its wines, its vineyards, also a big Bordeaux's a big port city, so we're outside of Bordeaux, but this is a prequel to the novel, and it tells a little bit about how the protagonist Marguerite came to be who she is. So if we're ready, whenever you're ready, Rick, you can let fly with a wider stream.
Bordeaux, France, 1554. Marguerite watched Lise's hands moving up and down on the neck of the lute. Marguerite herself had taught Lise these exercises for skill, but freely admitted that Lise had already far surpassed her in their execution. Lise held out the lute. "Here, you try." Marguerite flung up her hands. "No more. I can no longer concentrate. Play the Ballad of Jacques and Isabel." Lise shook her head. "Not with guests in the house. It's far too bawdy a song to be heard coming from the chamber of a jeune fille such as yourself." Marguerite made a face. She rose and prowled restlessly. "Let's go riding." "Guy and those men have already begun the day's dicing. They won't see us." Lise knew she should discourage this. Marguerite, dressing in her brother's cast-off riding clothes and setting off into the countryside on horseback, might be ignored when the family was alone, but Marguerite's oldest brother Guy had several guests. It was one of the times when Lise felt her own inclinations battling wisdom and propriety. Before coming into service with Marguerite's family as a companion and governess to Marguerite 3 months ago, Lise had got her living as part of an itinerant group of tumblers and players. Though always uncertain and sometimes dangerous, such a life had accustomed Lise to physical activity and reliable variety. She was finding the essentially sedentary life as Marguerite's attendant a challenge to her patience. Her own restlessness stimulated by Marguerite's, Lise assented and set down the lute. They were fortunate. Guy and his guests were indeed closeted indoors with several bottles of the best wine and another day of gaming before them. The stablemen were complicit, and Marguerite played roughly with the dogs as they waited for the horses to be saddled. Most of the servants indulged Marguerite, sorry for her because she had no mother, and charmed by her effortless kindness and ingenuous grace. At 14, Marguerite could no longer be mistaken for a child. She loved pretty clothes and ornament, but the chronically precarious state of the family finances and her brother's careless disregard meant that she seldom had much of either. Lise, having grown up near the edge of survival, never missed them. 10 years older than Marguerite, Lise often smiled to herself to think of what her long-dead parents would have made of this role that she now occupied. She and Marguerite had met in the city of Bordeaux on a festival day. She had saved Marguerite from an imminent danger into which the young woman had carelessly fallen. In return, and on a wild impulse she herself could not quite believe in, Marguerite, by guile, persuasion, and some outright lies, had rescued Lise from an uncertain future. The seemingly guileless Marguerite had, without consulting Lise because there hadn't been time, convinced her brother Louis that Lise was an experienced governess and lady's companion, recently discharged when her employer's daughter married. Marguerite had clearly outgrown her elderly nurse, and Louis's natural laziness was served by this facile solution, so he agreed to take Lise into service. The adaptability cultivated by her life so far was all that got Lise through those first few months. That, and Marguerite's kindness. Marguerite often covered up for Lise when the older woman made the kinds of errors a street performer is bound to make when thrust into the genteel daily life of a wealthy rural family. Lise was expected to know a lot of things she didn't know, and the complicity between herself and Marguerite of keeping their secret deepened the bond that already existed between them since that fateful day in the city. Both women inhaled deeply of the warm air as they rode away from the stables and were grateful to be out of doors. They rode in companionable silence for some time, until they came to a small stream running between scattered trees. "You've been getting better at jumping," Lise said. "That stream will be easy." Without leaving time for Marguerite to object, Lise spurred her horse into a canter and headed for the stream, jumping it with ease. On the other side, she slowed and looked back. Marguerite's face wore a set expression, but she dutifully sped her horse toward the water and took the stream with success, but little grace. Forbearing comment on the younger woman's poor form, Lise rode on, and Marguerite caught up. When they came to a stream significantly wider than the first, Marguerite hung back. "It's too wide," she said, her voice teetering on a whine. "No, it isn't. You can easily jump it." Rather than try to argue, Marguerite said, "Why don't we just go that way?" She pointed along the near bank to where the trees thinned out into an open field. She couldn't understand why Lise perpetually tried to frighten her. "But what if you couldn't go that way?" Lise asked patiently. Marguerite shifted irritably. "Such as when? When might I not be able to go that way?" Lise smiled. Something in her enjoyed seeing Marguerite's discomposure at such times. What if Guy's guests suddenly appeared in that field? Would you hide here in the field like a rabbit because you were afraid of jumping a small stream? The stream in question didn't look particularly small to Marguerite, but she resented the implication that she might resemble prey. She had always been of an adventurous disposition, but something in Lise's steady regard and inscrutable expression made Marguerite doubt herself just a little. She didn't want to seem a coward to Lise, who had survived on her own in a world whose dangers Marguerite couldn't even imagine. Looking grim, Marguerite walked her horse back some distance in order to approach the stream at a good clip. She made it over, but her horse landed sloppily on the far bank, and Marguerite slid dangerously, almost landing on her head in the water. When Lise jumped her own horse over and came back to Marguerite, it was to find her white-faced and shaking with nerves. She was methodically stroking Nuit's mane, trying to soothe the spooked horse, and looking as though she might cry. "You did well," Lise said bracingly. "You just need to be more confident, and attend more carefully to how you hold your shoulders and knees." Not reassured, Marguerite gathered up the reins and urged Nuit to a walk, saying nothing as she led their way among the trees. When they came to a still wider stream, Marguerite shook her head firmly. "There's a perfectly good ford not far upstream," she said. "We'll use it." "You could jump that, you know," Lise said unargumentatively, following behind Marguerite's black horse. Marguerite didn't answer. They returned to the stable to find that luck had deserted them. Guy was leading two of his companions in an inspection of the riding horses preparatory to a short ride. No doubt to clear their heads for more drinking, Lise thought cynically. A paragon of propriety when it came to the conduct of others, Guy chose to be outraged by Marguerite's attire. "You look like a stable hand," he barked at her. "Where is that black-haired attendant I paid to teach you how to be a lady?" Lise had slipped unobtrusively behind the shielding wall of the tack room and listened, unseen, as Guy continued to berate Marguerite long past the point necessary to make his point. Conscious of the amused gaze of his companions, Marguerite's posture became progressively more defeated, and she didn't try to defend herself or forestall his attack. Lise felt her own anger rising at Guy's careless bullying. She knew Marguerite to be kind and gracious. It infuriated Lise to see her abused by a person Lise considered a morose wastrel. Marguerite was, Lise believed, worth 10 of either of her older brothers, and Lise thought hard as she made her way back to Marguerite's rooms, the younger woman trailing disconsolately behind her. When they had washed and changed their clothing, Lise remarked with apparent indifference, You know, when you're jumping, you need to keep your shoulders straight, your head up, your back straight, and your posture confident. If you believe you will do it, Nui will believe it too. Marguerite nodded mutely. The encounter with Guy had driven the afternoon's events from her mind, and she felt impatient with Lise for going on about it. When she happened to chance a glance at Lise, however, she was startled by the older woman's expression. Lise's face showed a concern greater than that warranted by the instruction on horsewomanship. Lise's eyes had lost their typical neutrality, and she seemed to be trying to tell Marguerite something, but the younger woman didn't know what. They didn't ride again while Guy's guests remained in the house. The family's unpredictable finances currently permitted the engagement of a tutor for Marguerite's younger brother, Armand. And Marguerite sat with them at Lise's insistence. Marguerite's education had been spotty at best, and Lise strongly encouraged her in private to take advantage of the opportunity to learn from the mild-mannered old man. Afterwards, the two women would sit by the open window in Marguerite's chambers, and Marguerite would impart what she could of reading, geography, history, and rudimentary mathematics to the older woman. For Marguerite, education was an indifferent activity. For Lise, it was a hitherto unattainable privilege. For physical activity, they had to content themselves with rambling walks through the fields, woods, and vineyards of the family lands. Lise encouraged Marguerite to prolong these rambles significantly past the younger woman's threshold for exertion. Though her social superior, Marguerite was a little in awe of Lise in some respects, and was content to do as Lise wished. On one such walk, Marguerite asked idly, "Why do you encourage me so strongly to jump Nui? You are supposed to be teaching me the qualities of being a lady. I know this isn't your forte, but surely even you know that jumping my horse over rivers won't get me a husband." There was a long silence while Lise considered her words. Living in surroundings so alien to anything she had ever known caused her to think more deeply about many things she'd never really paused to consider before. A diffident demeanor and proper etiquette at the table barely scratched the surface of the strangeness. Finally, Lise said reflectively, "I always supposed I would marry as most women do, but I never had the luxury of waiting around passively for that to happen. As you know, my parents both died when I was still a child. People were kind, but I've always known I had to take care of myself somehow, woman or not. You've never had to worry about your next meal or a roof over your head. I don't suppose you will ever have to. Still, maybe I wish I'd had someone to teach me. I'm not sure what exactly." She bit her lip. She didn't feel comfortable telling Marguerite just how strongly she felt about this. Marguerite was so gentle and loving, so vital and energetic, so sweet and good. Lise's feeling of protectiveness when Marguerite's brothers bullied her surprised Lise. She longed to armor the younger woman against harm or hurt. "You are beautiful and you lack for nothing in the world, but maybe someday your safety or well-being will require you to jump a wider stream. Who else is there to teach a woman these things? You've been taught music and the deft use of a needle, but women like you seldom are taught the really important things." Lise had observed on a few occasions the way Marguerite would retreat into mute docility when confronted with an idea or experience that overwhelmed her. Processing the new and challenging seemed to demand all of Marguerite's inner resources. For the rest of their walk, Lise said no more, leaving Marguerite to her silent introspection. They spoke no more of jumping or courage in the days that followed. When Guy's guests had departed, and Guy with them, they returned to a relaxed regime of doing more or less as they pleased. On their first ride after Guy's departure, they found themselves retracing the course of their last ride. As they approached the stream where Marguerite had nearly been unseated, she wordlessly sped Nui toward the water. Marguerite's carriage was not exactly relaxed, but she bore in mind all Lise's admonitions, and woman and horse sailed over the stream, landing safely on the far bank. When Lise caught up, she said nothing, but gave Marguerite a smile of such joy that Marguerite needed no words. Marguerite still balked at the widest stream, but Lise did not encourage her. They took advantage of Guy's absence to ride out every day. It was a welcome change from study or practice on the lute. They seldom had a destination, and wandered widely. On the day before Guy's return, however, Marguerite led them determinedly on the familiar path to the widest stream. Lise noticed, but didn't remark on it. Marguerite jumped the narrower stream with the ease of habit, but with the still sharp exhilaration. She stopped them some distance from the widest stream, ostensibly to drink from the flask of heavily watered wine she carried. Lise could see clearly that the younger woman was steeling herself. Lise made idle remarks about the meadow flowers they had passed earlier, giving Marguerite space to compose herself, not making too much of Marguerite's fears. At last, tense but determined, Marguerite picked up the reins and set off. Lise followed more slowly. Marguerite raced toward the stream, seemed to pull herself and Nui upwards into a tight column of force, and leapt the horse over the water, letting out a cry mingling exuberance and terror in equal measure, then landing gracelessly but safely on the other side. Laughing in delight, Lise leapt her own horse over and came to a halt beside Marguerite. The younger woman threw one leg over and slid to the ground, leaning against her horse, laughing with excitement. Lise dismounted also and came to her side. Spontaneously, she took the younger woman into a fierce hug. "I told you could do it!" Some days after Guy's return, they had the ill chance to encounter him as they returned to the stables. He was engaged in a grumpy survey of the tack-room. Saddlery was one of the many commodities in scarce supply in the household. Perhaps the knowledge that the reckless indulgence of vice on the part of himself and Louis was to blame for this state of affairs gave a sharp edge to his dissatisfaction. Catching sight of Marguerite, flushed, disheveled, and wearing Louis's cast-offs, gave him an easy target for his irritability, and he began to reprove her again, particularly for having been seen by his guests. Having paused in the stable-yard to ask an unnecessary question of a stable lad so as to keep out of the way, Lise saw Marguerite tense. Instead of cowering, however, Marguerite drew herself up and lifted her head. "I have heard you," she said clearly. "You have said this before. I will be careful not to be seen by your guests again." Guy was startled into silence. Then he grumbled, "I should forbid you entirely. It's not seemly." But Marguerite knew this for an idle threat. Forbidding required enforcing, and Guy was far too disinterested in her to bother. He knew this too, and turned away, exiting the stable. Marguerite stood where he had left her, not moving. Lise strode in easily and said with elaborate unconcern, "It will be nice to be indoors out of this hot sun."
I wanted to hear the rest of the music.
It's pretty, right? It's
Yeah.
lute. It's a lute.
It's
It's
lute.
contemporary too. That's John Dowland, so he was a Elizabethan composer, so contemporary as
That's
well.
very cool. I want to just talk about the image that was up front during the reading. Was an image of a woman in kind of a white, lacy looking Elizabethan kind of full gown with a black horse, which of course makes total sense. Tell me, Christine, for folks who may not know this visually, how did somebody in the Elizabethan era sit on a horse wearing a dress?
Well, I think side saddle was a later invention, and so that's kind of why Marguerite is always borrowing her older brother's cast-off riding clothes because I don't honestly know much about I'll admit it, I don't know. I don't know how they got those hoops and those big skirts and stuff. So side saddle was one way to deftly
Mhm.
manage your clothing, and I'm not sure how safe and effective that was as a riding posture. And so if you wanted to ride safely and effectively, you were possibly going to be wearing breeches, which are pants like trousers, and so wearing men's clothes. And that's sort of why Marguerite is doing that in this story because women's clothing is it historically has generally been a way to bar women from active life because of its cumbersome insistence on layers and constraints. So yeah, Marguerite is not looking like the woman in that photo. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Or that portrait, I
yeah.
should say.
That
So
that port
yeah.
yeah, that portrait was definitely was sitting side saddle. So I would imagine they probably couldn't have had their wire hoops on because that just
It's hard to
hurt.
picture.
Yeah,
It's very. I think they had a ride. I've heard of a
riding hoop.
riding
Mm,
habit, like a habit as in a cloak thingy.
yeah, yeah.
So I think there were specialized riding clothes for decorous women who were riding in the socially approved manner. But in this context, Marguerite and Lise are definitely riding in men's clothes so that they can
Mhm.
ride safely.
So does that, are we supposed to take from that that they're a bit of rule breakers or just women of their own minds or
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. So Marguerite grew up with no parents, really,
mm,
and very, very little supervision. Bit of a wild animal in a certain sense. And Lee's, so there's issues of class in here too, because Lee's grew up on the streets more or less as a performer, and so she also had a very pragmatic approach to the rules of how women were supposed to behave. So, eh, mm, I'm not going to say they were agitators in any sense because they weren't trying to change the world around, the world around them. They just wanted to live in the way that they wanted to live. And for Marguerite, that meant she liked riding, and for Lise, that meant she wanted women, and especially a young woman who she admired, she wanted her to be to have the opportunity to develop courage and initiative, which are qualities that women of that time
mhm.
and of many times and places are not encouraged to have. So um, I don't want to make them into like trailblazers or advocates for women's rights or anything like that. But one of the ideas that I like to work with is how how do oppressed people make space for themselves and live their best life in a society that does not, that actively discourages them from doing so. And so, one of my ideas and themes in the story was the sort of subversive ways in which women may have encouraged each other to be courageous, particularly physically. Physical courage, again, something women were not encouraged to develop in the way that men were.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I hear sort of the repeating patterns in some of your storytellings, whether they're uh,
Yes, yeah,
more, you know, yeah, yeah, the themes that come through.
Yeah, and this is why I love historical fiction and science fiction is because they're escapist. So I can feel that I'm escaping the day-to-day world, and yet what they have in common is what makes us human, and how do those things not change through time and space? And what one of the things that makes us human is that the individuation we want to develop into our best selves, our most independent, self-actualized versions of ourselves. And how do we do that in places and times when that is actively discouraged or even, punished or had bad consequences? So definitely you're right to notice a theme in there of
And
throughout
this
my work.
particular short story you had mentioned off the top is like a prequel
Hmm.
to, are you able to tell us about what you're doing with this short story?
Oh, well, I sure can. So it's from quite a while ago. So I started writing short stories with Marguerite in them. And it led to me writing a historical fiction novel in which she is the protagonist. So she ends up in an arranged marriage with someone in Scotland and finds herself sort of in the middle of the Protestant Reformation. So that book contains has a lot of religious, gender, class kind of coming of age themes. And I wanted in once I had finished that book and I started getting interested in writing short stories. And when I thought backwards into Marguerite's younger years, I wondered where she had gained some of the qualities that I knew her as having. How did she become someone who liked being in nature and walking and riding? And so the novel still exists.
Hmm.
Self-published. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's still there. It's still in the
Did you
wild.
did you make an audio copy of this novel?
I did not. I did not. That would be a really epic work. I
It's that
didn't.
long, hey?
It's very long. Yeah, it's pretty long, and to have it record, I could do it. Maybe someday I'll take it on as a project. But this short story felt very digestible and something that
Yeah.
I could easily record. Yeah, and um one thing that I thought about a lot when writing was so I'm not writing about blind characters for a blind audience, and so I felt that I needed to have the language of the body, like body language, people gazing at each other, looking in each other's eyes. And so there's a certain amount of license that I take as a writer when I do that because being blind myself, I don't have access to that directly. And so mostly I get that through reading, a lot of reading and talking to people. So there's a tiny bit of a performative element there in in though, especially in those stories. And I think in all my writing that I do, because I don't I have a few. One of my stories later has a features a blind character, but I'm writing for a sighted audience mostly, just because the most of the world is sighted. So that's sort of a language that I experiment with. How do people communicate non-verbally? How do they use eye contact to convey meaning? It's something I'm persistently interested in, so it's fun to
Mhm.
play with as a writer as well.
Mhm. I think it's probably even more fun to play with considering the lens that you bring to the space.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I listen to it, I don't necessarily step back and go, oh, but Christine's blind. Like it
Mm.
does, you know what I mean? It does for me. I just
Mm-hmm.
like it's a story, and I expect this kind of stuff to be in a story,
Mm-hmm.
because this
Mm-hmm.
is the kind of writing that I've grown up with. Including body
Yeah.
language. It's very important,
Yeah.
because you can't just replace that with the whole like the audio description version, not the audio description version, but like the she is sad, she is, you know what I mean? Like it's got
Right. Yeah, yeah.
in there, and then I have to interpret it because that's just
Yes.
the way. But you sandwich it nicely with feeling and writing with body language, which is the sweet spot, I think, because and
Yes.
of
Thank
course
you.
you are meeting a lot of people with where they're at.
Yeah. Right. That's the goal
Yeah,
as a writer, I guess. So maybe we can move
yeah.
on to
What you
my
got
next piece. So the next piece is a song. It's called Ballad of Odo the Hero. And this is from a genre of music called filk. Filk. It's pretty obscure genre, but it's a combination. It's a the word it combines fan fiction and folk music. So there's this really geeky subgenre where people write fan fiction. So they take a universe or a world that another writer has created, and then instead of writing a story in that world, you write a song. And so filk, it's a thing. And this this relates to it actually turned into my second novel that I wrote, which is fan fiction. So you can't make any money on fan fiction, but I did barely made any money off my self-published either. So that's okay. Um, and so I would like to say this was all finished and completed before the world discovered that J.K. Rowling was a transphobic weirdo. And so I just apologize ahead of time to anyone who finds any Harry Potter content completely objectionable. But this song comes from book 6, the Half-Blood Prince, and there's a scene where Hagrid and Slughorn are drinking together, and they sing a song called "The Ballad of Odo the Hero." And all that Rowling gives us is uh, what the chorus of the song is, which you'll hear, and you don't know anything at all. That's all. There's just a chorus, and it's just a plot device. It has no relevance to the overall story. But this really intrigued me, that just the chorus line, the lines of the chorus caught my attention, and so I built a folk song, a filk song. And so it's a song in 2 parts. And so there'll be a moment when you think the song is over, but it's not quite over because it starts up again and tells you the second half. And mostly the reason I did that was in order to tell the whole story, it takes about 7.5 minutes. So it's a story, and this story turned out to be the center around which my fan fiction novel Before the Tide became grew around. It's the kernel around which my fan fiction novel evolved. So when you're ready, Rick, if we could play Ballad of Odo the Hero.
Odo the hero, they bore him back home to the place that he'd known as a lad. They laid him to rest with his hat inside out, and his wand snapped in two, which was sad. Some call him Odo the early, and some call him Odo the late. And though it's true he was often confused, his deeds they were noble and great. Some they call him Wednesday's child, for he'd always his full share of woe. No, he was born on a Thursday, some say, for he'd always a long way to go. But Odo's tale is a strange one, and it may be that both days are right. For his mother had Congress with a time-turning jewel, which some have said wasn't too bright. But she was a witch of great power, to her cunning all would attest. From when Odo was made to the days he was born, that time-turner lay on her breast. Odo the hero, they bore him back home to the place that he'd known as a lad. They laid him to rest with his hat inside out, and his wand snapped in two, which was sad. That jewel did strange things to Odo. It made him both early and late. Made time the snake that coils round on itself, not a path running forward and straight. For when Odo did look at a person, he saw them both infant and old. Of the chaos that reigned in Odo's brain, very little can really be told. He'd see both the creek and the river, see a flower both withered and new. For all times were one to poor Odo, you see. It made him quite daft, it's true. But Odo was Friday's child too, for loving and giving was he. Though his mind was fraught, he ever sought to save folk from what they could not see. His motives they were of the purest, to save folk from arrow and blade. But his judgment was blurred by the voices he heard that from sooner or later came. Odo the hero, they bore him back home to the place that he'd known as a lad. They laid him to rest with his hat inside out, and his wand snapped in two, which was sad.
the hero, they bore him back home to the place that he'd known as a lad. They laid him to rest with his hat inside out, and his wand snapped in two, which was sad. When William the Norman was casting his eye on England's coveted shore, Odo he found himself in the south, though why he wasn't quite sure. He happened upon Mistress Helga one morn, destined one of the Hogwarts four, and he laughed with delight and flapped mad with his hat, for they were fast friends of yore. And as they sought out herb in the wood, Odo was stricken, fell sore, for he had stealed upon Hastings field, and Odo knew peace no more. He saw the carnage to come at that place, that to others looked peaceful and green. He did not know when would come the fell blow, but shuddered at what he had seen. Helga, he said, you must help me, my friend, to save all the lives that I may, for my will it is strong, but I'm often wrong. Oh, Helga, pray help me that day. Well, Helga she thought, and Helga she schemed, gathered herbs from field and from glen. Felix Felicis, liquid luck, Helga brewed up for her friend. On that fell day when battle was joined, Odo that potion he drank. Like a feather he was on that field of death, and he saved folk regardless of rank. He saved all he could regardless of side, Norman and Saxon and Dane, noble and freeman, cotter and bowman. He saved all the lives that he made. For now at last he saw things aright, time as a tapestry fair, and the layers of time, they were clear in his mind. He knew when to be and where. He saw the arrow before it was loosed, the axe before it could fall, and many owed Odo their lives that day, though he tried he could not save them all. As the day waned and the battle decided, fair Helga came on to the field, with potion and wand to save whom she could, and by the dying to kneel. An arrow it was that Odo saw first, toward Mistress Helga it flew. Too far to call, he stood in its way, and the arrow it pierced him through. Helga she grieved with full many that day, and her comrades they also were sad. They swore over ale cup to carry him home to the place that he'd known as a lad. Odo the hero, they bore him back home to the place that he'd known as a lad. They laid him to rest with his hat inside out, and his wand snapped in two, which was sad.
So the first line and the last line that you heard there, those were from Rowling. And if you are familiar with the Harry Potter universe, you might recognize some of the characters, Helga, especially in the Felix Felicis potion. But it's set around the Battle of Hastings, which was in 1066 when the Normans invaded England, a very pivotal time for England. And the story of the fan fiction novel that I wrote grew grew around that. So fun. Rhyme. I like the rhyme scheme. I had fun with the rhyme scheme.
I did too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun. Yeah.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
fun in an unexpected way, because it wasn't necessarily an easy rhyme scheme all the time, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you for noticing. Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
noticing.
Moving sentences around and like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
could use old-timey phrases like the arrow pierced him
It's one
through.
of
So I
my
love
things.
that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. I love the
Pierce it in
oldie-timey
through.
phrases.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, so much fun.
So we can keep moving right along if that's
Sure.
agreeable. I have so the next story, some people who are on the call may remember that in a previous guest appear by me in this space, I talked about two musicians, Maria Theresia Paradis and Friedrich Dulon, and my colleague Michelle Kuhn and I got a Canada Council grant to research these two people who were musicians in Germany and Vienna in the late 1700s. They were both blind, and they both were composers and performers. They both toured. They both performed in a lot of different European cities, and very unusual for the time for blind people to be in the public sphere in this way. Particularly for a woman. Paradis was friends with Mozart, Haydn wrote for her. Mozart composed for her as well. She was a composer herself. She was a pianist and singer and composer. Dulon was a flutist, and he doesn't come into this story. He doesn't appear in this story, but he is mentioned in the story. He's talked about. And these two people, Dulon and Paradis, they were contemporaries, and we have no evidence that they ever met, but as a storyteller, as a historical fiction writer, I believe they did. I want to believe that they did. And so this story is set in the late 1700s in Vienna. And at that time, Vienna was very much a cultural center of Europe. They were coming out of a long period of stability where the Empress Maria Theresa, for whom Paradis is named, she reigned for 40 years, and she initiated a lot of social reforms that were really beneficial for her people. But she was also an ardent Roman Catholic and had a lot of prejudicial views about other religions and other ways of life. And her reign had a lot of censorship in it. And so as where this story sits is after her death, and the country is sort of opening up. So the Age of Enlightenment is happening. There's a lot of new ideas around, and Vienna very much feels to Maria Theresia Paradis as the center of the cultural world of Europe. And so the cafe was the social center of a city. The cafe would be they didn't have social media, they didn't have TV, they didn't have radio. So if you wanted to know what was going on in the world, you hung out at the cafe and you talked to people. And even we say cafe, coffee was fairly new at that time. So even the drink of coffee was an exciting innovation. And the cafe was definitely where you would go to hear new ideas, to meet your friends, to meet new people, to find out the buzz, what's going on, what's coming up. And for obviously, as you know, we can all understand, at that time, disability was the idea of equality didn't really exist. The idea of accessibility, inclusion, just it was not in the public mindset. So for a blind woman to be in a public space is pretty unusual. It's a little bit daring, maybe. And again, the theme comes up for me of how does a woman find a sense of place, a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, or the basic things that we take for granted before considering whether she happens to be a musical virtuoso and performer. And so the story is called An Afternoon at the Cafe, and it's a work of imagination on my part based on research, but also based on just my sense of human nature and how people find their place in the world. So Rick, when you're ready, if we could roll
Team, how
the
long is this
audio.
piece?
Sorry?
How long is this piece?
It's about 18 minutes or so.
Oh, okay, great. Awesome. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Okay.
Maria Theresia descended the staircase with extreme care. It was narrow, irregular, and steep. One hand was on the shoulder of her father, who walked in front, and one hand was on the wall to balance herself. She had worn shoes that were sturdier than fashion dictated, but fashion meant nothing if you stumbled and fell on rough cobblestones or slid on a pile of horse droppings. The stairs were tricky even for sighted guests. Not being able to see them lent an extra dimension of risk that she took seriously. At the bottom, Maria Theresia relaxed and allowed her senses to be filled with the atmosphere of the café. She had looked forward to this visit with much anticipation. The air was permeated with the astringent, exhilarating scent of coffee, with underlying notes of sweet pastries, damp wool, and the odors of many people gathered together in a space somewhat short on ventilation. The café was densely packed with guests, talking, laughing, exclaiming, greeting friends. There was a constant clatter of dishes, cups, and spoons, and the limited space between tables bustled with servers. Maria Theresia was more accustomed to private salons where the group was small, contained, and mostly known to her. This sea of unpredictable strangers was intimidating, but also exciting. A table was found for them, and they sat down. Maria Theresia, as she always did, kept a mental map of the space as they moved through it. So, once seated, she knew that the stairway entrance was behind her and to her right. Right behind her was a group of men talking together. Off to her right was a mixed group of men and women who laughed a lot, and to her left, what she thought must have been a series of small tables holding a few guests each, engaged in quieter conversation. She inhaled slowly, savoring the aromas of coffee and sweets. Her sister Caroline had looked forward to this afternoon also, but at the last minute she had been required to stay at home with their ailing mother. Maria Theresia was sorry for her, but secretly glad on her own account. She loved Caroline, but time away was refreshing, and there was so much to take in. They had just been served their coffee when one of the small boys who acted as runners between tables, clearing dishes, approached them and spoke to her father. "Herr von Paradis," he piped, "there is a messenger outside who says he must speak to you about your upcoming travel arrangements. He looked for you at your home, but followed you here, and he asks if you will come outside to speak with him." Maria Theresia could feel her father's hesitation and doubt. "Go, father," she said. "I will be fine here." "I don't like to leave you on your own," he fretted. "If Caroline were here—" "Father, go," she said reassuringly. "There's no reason to be concerned." She was impatient with his extreme care for her and for propriety, but determined to keep her impatience from him. He beckoned one of the young women circulating with trays of pastries. "I must go outside to speak with a messenger," he told her. "Please attend to my daughter and make sure she is attended to." Maria Theresia sighed inwardly at his familiar awkwardness. He couldn't bring himself to use the right words for things, and so would not tell the server that his daughter was blind, and so obfuscated, leaving the young woman confused. Maria Theresia's blindness was not obvious to the casual observer, which was a social asset most of the time, but it did lead to uncomfortable moments like this one, where a stranger was left to wonder if she was perhaps simple-minded. "I'm fine," she said when her father had gone. "He worries. Please go about your work." She made a friendly, fending motion, and the server moved away. Maria Theresia sat back in her chair, lifting the cup to her nose to inhale the scent of the coffee, a smell she always found both stimulating and satisfying. Along with the scent, she also savored her solitude in this crowd. Without her father or sister, she was free to listen to all the talk around her, a rare opportunity to hear a slice of life from her home city, which she thought of as the cultural center of Europe, and which she loved. At the table in front of her, 3 men spoke about the easing of censorship that had occurred in the past 5 years under the rule of Emperor Joseph II. Works from France that the Empress Maria Theresia had banned during her reign were now available to students, and any readers who cared to could learn more about the Age of Reason. Off to her left, a mixed group discussed the growing numbers of Protestants welcomed in Vienna. Under the rule of the Empress, for whom Maria Theresia herself was named, Protestants, and particularly Jews, had been targets of conversion, discrimination, and even expulsion. The Empress had been such a pivotal figure in Maria Theresia's life, assuming a presence more important than her own mother, that it was difficult for Maria Theresia to hear anything that sounded like criticism of her reign. But new ideas were exciting, and she was acutely conscious of Vienna's place as the center of European power, influence, and art. Behind her, her attention was instantly caught by mention of the name Mozart. The men at the table behind her were talking music, and her ears immediately sharpened. "I heard him in Hanover," one man was saying. "There was a performance of your Andante in C major with the orchestra, Herr Mozart. It was an outstanding performance in several ways. One of the violinists actually dropped his bow during the performance. But the truly remarkable part was the flutist, a young man from Stendhal. His playing was excellent, even though he's blind. Poor fellow." Maria Theresia stopped noticing the smell of her coffee or any other conversation. A second man, not Mozart, for she was friends with Mozart and would have recognized his voice immediately, replied, "That's absurd. How could a blind man perform with an orchestra?" "A man doesn't need to see to be able to play a flute," Mozart's familiar voice replied equably, and Maria Theresia felt a thrill of recognition. "Well, perhaps not," the second man said doubtfully, "but how would he know his cues? When to come in? How to even get onto the stage? Surely you are mistaken. It would be unseemly." Again, it was Mozart who replied, "Any musician who relies only on visual cues to know his part is no musician at all. Is not music all for the ears and the soul?" "Indeed," the first man said, "this young fellow is said to have an astonishing memory. As a child he was introduced to the great Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, and dazzled the master with his feats of memory." "But to put such a one on stage in front of a crowd?" insisted the second man. "Who would commit such an indiscretion?" "The young fellow travels with his father and sister," his companion told him. "His father also plays, though not as well as his son. His father guided the young man to his place on the stage, then came for him when the other musicians walked off." "Really, if you'd heard him play, you would have forgotten about his affliction entirely." "I have heard that he also performs the Quanz concerto beautifully." Maria Theresia felt excitement thrum through her. She was friends with Mozart, and she longed to know the name of this flutist who, like herself, was blind. But while half of her wanted to turn in her chair and join in the conversation, the other half heard her sister Caroline's voice, pointing out with frustration and weariness that it would be unladylike to do so, the kind of careless indiscretion that she, Maria Theresia, needed to be even more careful of than sighted women. All her life had been subject to these constraints. The rules governing women's behavior in social settings were inhibiting enough, but they were at least understood by everyone. As someone with a significant disability, but one that wasn't immediately apparent, the rules that governed Maria Theresia's conduct were even more onerous and less clear. As a performer, she could be the object of attention, even scrutiny, but in a social setting where most, if not all of the people were strangers, it would be risking a breach of etiquette to turn and intrude herself into the conversation of men. As the conversation behind her turned to music venues in Hanover, a silent but fast-paced argument took place in her mind. If she did not ask, she might never find out the name of the flutist, If she did ask, she might be perceived as impolite, indiscreet, and she had a deep-seated and well-founded fear of being the object of scandal. Finally, as such arguments often did, it came down to, what would the Empress do? The Empress Maria Theresia, for whom she herself was named, was a central figure in her worldview. This had been true her entire life, and was still true 5 years after the Empress's death. Maria Theresia's father was a tax official and had been a key player in the radical reforms the Empress had instituted. Reforms that had taken wealth from the hands of those who hoarded it and redistributed it to fund her army, but also to improve the health and education of her people. The Empress had been bold, strong-willed, capable, and fearless. She had not achieved her successes by being timid. Maria Theresia turned in her chair to face the direction of Mozart's familiar voice. "Herr Mozart," she said into a break in the conversation, "I hope you don't mind, but when I heard your voice I so wished to greet you." "Fräulein von Paradis!" Mozart exclaimed. "I did not see you come in. Such a pleasure to see you here. Let me introduce you to my friends, Herr Schultz and Herr Hoffmann." The men stood, and Maria Theresia stood, hoping she wasn't giving away her blindness by positioning herself awkwardly. She never met people unaccompanied by her father or sister, but whatever she did worked well enough, because the men bowed politely over her hand. She resumed her chair, but subtly turned it to face their table. With easy charm, Mozart said, "Well, here is one who can tell us about how blind musicians comport themselves. Fräulein von Paradis is accomplished at the piano both as a composer and a player, and sings like a songbird. And she, like your flutist, is blind." Maria Theresia immediately regretted her decision. There was an extremely awkward silence, not an uncommon occurrence in conversations with the sometimes ebullient Mozart, but where she usually found his enthusiasm and gregariousness amusing, she now felt herself the focus in a way that was uncomfortable. To fill the silence, she said, "I am here waiting for my father, who has been called to speak with a messenger outside. But I couldn't help overhearing you discuss a flutist from Stendhal. May I know his name?" The first man replied, in a friendly tone meant to put her at ease, "He's called Friedrich Dulin. He himself composes for the flute as well as playing beautifully. He has traveled widely. He is a most personable and friendly young man, I understand, and I think we can look for great things from him." The second man said bluntly, "And where did you say your father was, Fräulein?" The inquiry was so obviously rude that Maria Theresia felt her discomfort change quickly to irritation, which she took little trouble to hide. "He was called to speak to a messenger outside," she replied, in a tone consciously louder than necessary, taking a subtle pleasure in reversing a tactic often used toward her, speaking louder, as though her blindness made it necessary to raise the voice. She felt the tactic was suitable to be employed against those with bad manners. "Ah, the fine Herr von Paradis," Mozart said with easy grace. "He is a great supporter of the arts, and also one who believes in the education of women, as this charming young lady can attest to." "My father took his ideas from our great and dearly departed Empress," Maria Theresia said. "She brought us into the modern world by insisting that all boys and girls be given a basic education, not only because it makes a more productive society, but because it dignifies each person." She meant her words specifically for Herr Hoffmann, who had been so dismissive of the idea of a blind person taking a place in public life. He seemed to know her words were a challenge to him, because he said abruptly, "How could a blind person be educated? You can't even read." Caroline had often schooled Maria Theresia on the importance of governing her facial expression. As she thought about the love and care her father and teachers had taken to make her maps she could read with her fingers, or coach her in French and Latin. She realized that she was probably failing to hide the disdain she felt for this ignorant oaf. Had he asked questions with genuine respect and curiosity, she would have been proud to explain, but his attitude of dismissal was far too familiar. Mozart, with his keen perception of the feelings of others, whom he respected, especially of a friend, bridged the silence with a cheerful laugh. Surely we would rather speak of music than Latin or Greek. Tell us, Fräulein von Paradis, what are you currently working on? Ah, I am working on some Lieder right now. But, Herr Mozart, can I ask a favor of you? But of course, replied Mozart, as one of his friends excused himself to check on their order. I am intrigued by this blind flutist Dulin. Since Vienna is where everyone eventually comes, I would like to be prepared to meet him and play music with him, perhaps. The oaf snorted, but Mozart warmly said, What an excellent idea! The andante he played is scored for orchestra, but we could put together a wonderful piano accompaniment. We will have to meet soon and do that. I also am keen to meet this young flutist, Mozart said. Mozart's friend rejoined the table, asking if he had missed anything. Nothing important, said the oaf, and Maria Theresia bristled. Mozart added, Just some piano talk. Maria Theresia could hear the amusement in his voice. And Fräulein, please do tell us about the Lieder you are composing, turning the conversation back to his original question. Halfway down the stairs, returning to the noise and bustle of the café, Herr von Paradis scanned the room to make sure that Maria Theresia was well. When he saw her, her chair turned toward a table of men, obviously in animated conversation with them, he stopped in his tracks and put a hand to his head. A patron descending behind him nearly bumped into him and knocked him down. Herr von Paradis muttered an apology and hurried down the stairs. Why, oh why wasn't Caroline here to prevent this sort of thing? Would Maria Theresia never learn to conduct herself as she should? He made his way quickly to the table. But, much to Maria Theresia's relief, before her father could rebuke her, Herr Mozart said genially, Ah, Herr von Paradis, your lovely daughter was just telling us about the Lieder she is composing. In the carriage, on their way home, the inevitable reproof was forthcoming. But her father loved her dearly and was essentially a tolerant man. Really, though, he said judicially, you simply must learn to be more decorous. I know, father, I will try. I know it is important. I know what I do reflects on you. Her words were dutiful, but then her tone became mischievous. But really, Herr Mozart agreed that we could meet to work up a piano part for his andante in C major. Her father smiled indulgently and touched her hand with affection. Truly, he had chosen her name well.
So that lovely piano music there is actually a composition by Paradis. I learned since I read that story, I learned to pronounce her name properly. It's Maria Theresia Paradis. That's the German way to say it. And that piano piece that began and ended the story is a composition of hers as well. So again, themes of inclusion, who are our mentors, and in this case, her mentor was clearly the Empress, who she was acquainted with. She knew the Empress, and the Empress was a patron of hers. And so more stories to come, definitely, on about those characters, because yeah, we received a Canada Council grant. We did a beautiful trip to Europe with lots of research. So there'll be more stories about Paradis for sure. And in the interest of time, shall we trip right along, Amy, into the next? Yeah? Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So I have one more song and one more story. The song is 3 minutes long and the story is about 14 minutes. So I think we can squeeze them all in. This song is called War Drum, and there's a long, storied, glorious history of protest songs and anti-war songs, and they're generally from the perspective of men, and it's men who fight. So sort of, but women are affected by war in different ways. And this song called War Drum is about that. And so when you're ready, Rick, we can roll a war drum, please.
The Lord is come, he's beating the drum. He's come for our fathers, he's come for our sons, to fight for his castle, to fight for his land, to leave the women to bide as they can. No men in the village, no men on the farms, no men in the fields, no men in the barns, no men in the factories, no men on the line, but they'll keep them below to work in the mines. The Lord is come, he's beating the drum, he's come for our fathers, he's come for our sons, to fight with his swords, to fight with his bows, to fight with his bombs, he'll lay them in rows. I've only 2 sons, I said when they came, praying my third would stay hidden away. We stand at the cenotaph, unknown and unnamed. There's a chair at the table, forever unclaimed. The Lord is come, he's beating the drum. He's come for our fathers, he's come for our sons, to fight for his shipyards, to fight for his gold. He'll take them all, the young and the old. Some lost their fathers, some lost their sons, some drink gin and the war is not won. Some lay down with strangers to get food for their kids. No medals for us, no banners, no win. The Lord is come, he's beating the drum. He's come for our fathers, he's come for our sons, to fight for his oil, to fight for his creed, to fight for his power, to fight for his greed. The Lord is come, he's beating the drum. He's come for our fathers, he's come for our sons, to fight for his castle, to fight for his land, leaving the women to bide as we can.
There's this interesting, I want to call it fun, musical trope where you take really serious lyrics, like genuinely serious, even tragic lyrics, and put them to an upbeat, jaunty tune. And bluegrass does this a lot, and so I was playing with that a little bit.
I will tell you that
And
wartime songs are some of my favorite because there's such rich storytelling in them.
it's so true. It's so true. And some of the best art, honestly, is about war. It's terrible. It's a terrible truth, but it's just it's a distillation of the best and the worst of humanity. And yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So I'll move into the last story so that we can yeah, wrap things up. So this story is called The Song Garden, and here's how it came about. Some colleagues and I got a grant from the Toronto Arts Council to make a performance of storytelling at a place called Lee Lifeson Art Park. And if you're a fan of Canadian music and the band Rush, you'll recognize the name Lee Lifeson, the names Lee and Lifeson. So Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson are both from Willowdale, which is North Toronto, and there's a park in that neighborhood that is dedicated to art. It's called an art park, which is a lovely idea. So in this park, there's an amphitheater and there are some music-based sculptures. And it's a lovely concept. It's a really nice little urban park. And the prompt for this event was to create an original story that tells about the past, present, or future of something that happened in this park involving a meeting or a parting. And where I chose to go with this was into the future. What will be happening at this Lee Lifeson Art Park, a place dedicated to music and art? What will this space be like, this ground be like in, say, 500 years, 400 or 500 years? So the future, as we'll just say it out, doesn't look too chipper, and things look a little dire into the future. And decisions, Amy, as you so wisely brought into our conversation from the Indigenous perspective, the choices that have been being made over the last century or so have not been looking 7 generations ahead to the well-being. So it's a troubling view into the future, but what will be happening in the space currently occupied by Lee Lifeson Art Park? So this story is an exploration of that, and the story is called The Song Garden. So Rick, if you will, let's listen to The Song Garden.
When I first saw the guest house, I was uncertain, but when I spotted the anfitrion, easily identifiable by his distinguishing blue armband, I relaxed. He was tending a small herb garden outside the stone building, but when he saw me, he rose, offering the customary greeting. His presence ensured that I would receive the best food, shelter, and water available, and the neutrality of the road in exchange for whatever I had to give in return. When we walked into the main sleeping room, a woman was arranging some things on the shelf by her bed. The first thing I noticed about her was her hair. It was of a lustrous reddish-brown and hung down her back in a thick braid. I instantly envied it. My own hair was a constant disappointment to me, and I had long given up hope and effort. She turned, and before I even introduced myself, I said, "Your hair is beautiful. I bet it looks great when it's down." She responded with a frown that I didn't understand, and then introduced herself as Faral. She gave me a bow that was barely polite, then turned back to her shelf. I took my pack off my back and flung it onto my bed with a gusty sigh. I introduced myself. "I'm Rana," I said. I'm pretty chatty, and I'd been on the road, on my own, walking for days, and it was nice to have someone to talk to. I told her some of the rumors and stories I had heard about the Song Garden, then asked, "You're here for the Dark Moon ritual, I suppose?" She nodded. "I'm also commissioning an honor song," she said, and her serious expression began to make more sense. Honor songs were for the dead, I knew. People would come here from long distances to commission them, to preserve and honor the beloved dead. To fill the awkward silence, she said, "You're here for the ritual too?" I began unpacking things that I would need and arranging them on my shelf. "Oh, well, I will participate since I'm here, of course, but I'm really here to petition to stay as a musician." She looked surprised. "I thought they didn't take new musicians very often." "Oh, they will want me," I said with confidence. "I've been singing songs, boat songs, since I was little." I tapped the paddle and wave water clan tattoo on my upper arm. "I've been making up songs, rowing songs, since before I got this." Her eyes lingered on my tattoo, focused on the inflamed skin around the recently added third wave in a way I couldn't interpret. But then she just shrugged and said, "Oh, you must be very good. Maybe you will sing me your song." "Well, it's not quite finished yet, but I'll sing it for you once I'm accepted," I said. "Are you a musician too?" I asked. "Not really," she replied. "My mother made me learn notes and taught me some theory, and I didn't really mind it, but she was the musician. She always had a small instrument of some kind with her, a harmonica or something. and she'd look for new ones when we scavenged. She could make almost anything sound nice. I don't love music the way she did. I just know some of it. Her face looked grave, and it was easy to guess who the honor song was for. In the days that followed, we worked together side by side in the vertical garden farm or on the pedal generator. The farm's vertical gardens, trained down the crumbling outsides of the old tall buildings with their roots and structure inside, made me nervous. They seemed too precarious, with their crumbling balconies punctured by tenacious roots, burdened by mounds of soil, lush plants, and small trees. The outside harvesters dangling from ropes to pick fall fruit so high in the air took my breath away, and I didn't like climbing the endless, dank stairwells on floors of moldering concrete. I felt creeped out inside the old structures, but Farrell seemed unfazed. I began to see for the first time how a life on land might make someone a bit more versatile. Likewise, as a walker, she was at ease on the pedal generator. As I gasped and strained, I'm a rower, not built for that. Working side by side, I found out that she was almost a knowledge keeper, though young for it. She explained that her mother had scavenged and traded books. When a book was about real things, she would make me memorize it before we traded it away, Farrell explained. She could quote long passages from books about things like electricity or botany or geography. I was especially interested in the geography, of course, because of my boat family, and often asked her to repeat things. In exchange, I told her stories about my boat family, places our boat had been, delivering goods and people from place to place. The year was getting on, and there weren't many guests at the Song Garden. Sunset came early, and every morning and evening the caller would stand at the ancient and weathered horn of reflection, droning into the low-mounted horn, which was almost as long as he was tall. The slight older man would call us together to gather for morning and evening song in the bowl. Farrell sometimes heard songs there that she had only ever seen written down, never heard sung or played. I was surprised that she wasn't more excited by this. For me, music is endemic, a part of daily life. But she explained that it just wasn't that way with her. Petitions would be heard and decided on the day before the night of the dark moon ritual. As the day got closer, I began to feel a little less confident about my song. I would slip away from the communal work to find some privacy in a field to rehearse. Without the accustomed rhythm of paddling, I found it difficult to keep time, and did so only awkwardly by tapping my foot on the ground. Without the accompanying voices I was used to, my own voice alone suddenly sounded weak and isolated. The night before the day of petitions, we were both nervous and quiet. In the morning, we went to the sunrise songs in the bowl as usual, but we didn't talk much. Petitions were heard separately, and we wished each other a rather stilted good luck, and went our separate ways, craving solitude. When I returned to the guest house after my petition, I saw Farrell lying on her bed facing the wall, clearly communicating a wish to be left alone. That suited me. I had come only to change into work clothes. Despite my aching legs, some time on the pedal generator would be a welcome distraction. At evening song, we sat together, but didn't talk. When we returned to the guest house, she rummaged in her pack and came out with a sturdy wooden hairbrush. "I don't feel like talking," she said. "But my mother used to brush and braid my hair. Would you do it for me?" I took the brush in my hand, feeling the wood smooth from other hands. She sat down on my bed, and I sat down behind her. It took some time, and when we were finished, there was a respectable pile of twigs and leaves on the floor, but her braid was straight and neat, and I think we both felt a bit better. All who intended to experience the dark moon ritual lined up near the sound mirror, a series of small boxy horns mounted on rusty bars, each pointed in a different direction. We were guided one by cloaked musicians to a horn on the mirror. Each of us was told very quietly in our ear either speak or listen. There was a time for each. The sound mirror was a place for sending words, thoughts, hopes, messages, or feelings into the world. It was also a place to listen, to hear what was to be heard. What happens at the dark moon ritual is very personal, and it was many years before Faral and I talked about what we had each experienced. In the morning, Faral and I continued to avoid each other's gaze and didn't speak much. It would have been disrespectful to avoid morning song in the bowl, so we went, together but separate. On this, the morning of the new moon, the songs included any honor songs that had been commissioned that month. I could tell which honor song was Faral's mother's, first by the way Faral's posture turned even more in on itself than usual, then by the words, which told of a gentle, brave woman who traveled, collecting and passing on what wisdom she found, recognized for her gift of clear seeing that made her a peace bringer, doing what must be done, and who never stayed anywhere for long. I felt grief rise in response for Faral, but also for the failure of my own expectations. When the morning song was over and everyone else had scattered to their day's tasks or their road, we stayed where we were. "Your mother's honor song is beautiful," I said quietly. There was a long pause. "That's not all I came here for," Faral replied finally. "I petitioned to be allowed to stay. I had some songbooks and sheet music that I thought would buy me a place. I thought I could stay as a music transcriber." She swallowed. "But they already had most of the works I brought, and they didn't mind keeping the duplicates I was willing to leave them. But, of course, they can only support so many, and what I have isn't enough." I was confused. "But you don't really love music? Not like, well, not enough to make your life here like I wanted to. So why?" "It's like you heard in the honor song. My mother didn't like to stay in one place for long. When we traveled together, it was mostly okay, but it's not a good life to travel alone. And I don't really have a place to... Well, I'll head south again, I guess. Maybe somewhere we stayed before will have need of a knowledge keeper." I, who was almost never alone, and who had cherished my journey to the song garden as a solo adventure, didn't know what to say. Finally, I said, "I've planned for 2 years to come here and petition to be a musician, to change my path." I tapped the clan tattoo on my upper arm. "It was a secret. I made up my mind but didn't tell anyone. I was so sure that I'd be accepted. I've been singing and making up rowing songs all my life, but they said my song was simplistic and my voice was only adequate. They gave me some dried fruit and vegetables and even some cheese in exchange for the compact discs I brought, but they aren't letting me stay either." "Well, at least you didn't tell anyone what you planned," Faral said. "It's not like you can't hold your head up when you go back to your boat family." She didn't add, "and at least you have people to return to," but I heard it anyway. There was another long silence. I had heard Faral join in on a song or two in the morning and evening song times, but knew her voice to be kind of weak and unprepossessing, words she herself had used to describe it in conversations about music. So I said, into the silence, "I remember the tune of your mother's honor song, but not the words. You've probably memorized them already. If you tell them to me, I could sing the song for you before we leave." She took a deep breath, and our eyes met for the first time in 2 days. She recited the words a few times, so that I was sure of them. She had complimented me on my singing voice in a way that seemed sincere, and so I sang the honor song with confidence and kindness. When I'd finished, I said tentatively, "My boat family has no apprentice knowledge keeper. If you came back with me, Our knowledge keeper is old, but you could teach her as much as she could teach you. You'd have to develop some upper body strength pretty quickly to be accepted, but I think you'd be welcomed for a season or two, maybe longer. And so, both of us uncertain about whether we had done the right thing, whether we'd left the song garden with the transformation that spot was said to bring, we left together. The separate roads that had brought us to the song garden joined into one path.
That's actually the first science fiction story I've ever written now that I stopped to think about it. And it's one of my favorite genres to read. But it was really absorbing to world build. And by world building, sort of just imagining the backstory of all of the things that are alluded to in that story. So it's very much about place, but also about the future and what might persist. And so that place that now is the Lee Lifes and Art Park maintains its identity as a place where music is honored. And I started with that idea and I really liked that idea. So I built on that. And that's the work that I brought for this evening. And my gosh, what a night full of me. I feel very self-oriented, self-centered right now. A little
It was
flattered to.
meant to be a night full of you. One quick question before we see if anyone in our Zoom room has questions is, I recognized a character name that you've used in another story, which is
You
Pharrell.
did? You
I
did? Oh my
I
gosh.
did. So I'm wondering how this story connects to that story, or if it's just another
Oh.
plot on the journey.
You remember? Oh my gosh. I
I
didn't think
do.
anyone would recognize. So the character Faral, her name means wanderer or traveler. And she does the character, well, a character named Faral does appear in a holiday story, the Book of Winter that I
Totally.
told in this
Yeah.
space last solstice, a holiday Christmas gathering. And oh, I'm so flattered that you remember that. So her name does mean traveler. And they're connected in my mind, but I don't know yet if it's the exact same person
Hmm.
or not. I'm still the character is growing in my mind and traveling in a future in a disjointed sort of future is very much a theme for that character. But whether it's the exact same person, I think it is, but I'm still not sure. But I'm so flattered that you remember that. Oh my gosh, thank you. That's a
I can I
real treat.
I can see in my imagination a an anthology,
Me
which
too.
which is
Me
a book
too.
of short stories. They don't necessarily have to
Yeah.
connect, but of the places that Pharrell has been
Yeah.
to.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, I'm all warm in my heart. That really means a
I
lot that you
I'm
remember.
glad that I'm
Thank
glad
you.
that you're warm in your heart on it. I heard it right away and I thought, oh, I know this character. I
What an
know this.
attentive listener. Thank you. Yes, they're very much connected. Very much connected. Maybe even the same
Very
character.
cool. I feel
Thank
like I
you.
found one of those what do they call them?
Easter eggs?
Easter eggs? Yeah, I found an Easter egg. Yeah, you
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. You did. You fully did. Thank you.
I got it.
Well
Got it.
spotted.
This has been such a lovely night. I just want to see if anybody in our Zoom room wants to ask questions. Of course, we have a hand from Ben and from Louis. No, it's from Lori.
Christine, is this
Yeah.
Christine? I want to be creatively cool. Malec?
Well, that's my last name. That's not, I haven't heard that middle name yet, but I'll go with it. Sure.
So, my question is, did you actually get did you get to actually record this all from your home community? Or did you actually splice this from YouTube?
Splice it from YouTube. Nope, this is all from my little home studio. So I've got a setup with a laptop and a microphone and an audio mixer, and all of my. So when I'm being blind, I choose the way I record is I have an earbud in one ear using JAWS, so I'm arrowing down line by line and reading into the microphone. So it's a. Oh, you're wondering if I did it with AI. That's what you're wondering. No, it's all me.
No,
It's
I was actually not, but that actually brought me to a second question.
Yeah.
Just to make you laugh and to make Amy laugh over there.
Oh,
Was it from AI?
It was not from AI. That's a valid question, though, because you can submit a sample of your voice and AI will generate a synthetic version of your voice, and then you can feed it any text that you want. And so that could have been done by AI. It was not, though. But thank you for checking. Yeah,
And
no, that's all in my home
thank
studio.
you for answering my two questions. And I will see you guys all in the next meeting.
Thank you,
thanks, Ben.
Ben.
Have a good evening, Amy, and good job tonight.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's go to Lori.
Okay, I think I got it this time.
We got you. We
There you
got you.
are.
I only got to hear the last story. You don't want to know how my evening's been.
Aw.
And I'm glad I chimed in when I did. And my wonderful dog here on the floor got to hear the story too while we were
Aw.
cooking.
I hope your dog liked it.
Yeah, he is like resting by the table. But is other stories that you've done tonight, are they gonna be on YouTube this weekend where I can listen to everything? Because the
Will
one story
be.
you did, I loved it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, Christine's work is going to be on our YouTube channel, so you can
Good.
listen to it over and over and over again.
And I liked the story when you said the lady's name, it's like, I didn't realize until Amy had said something that was in your story from the winter solstice.
It's true.
And
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
You
Same
said
name.
something. And the dog's name that's on the floor, this is Volt, Volt.
Very nice.
Oh,
Brand new guide
Volt.
dog.
Yeah, brand new guide dog. He says
Oh,
we've only been home since Saturday,
oh
so
my gosh.
he's had
Congratulations.
to go to work the last, days with me. And
Mm-hmm.
he says it was a very, very long day today because we got denied by Uber 3 times trying to go home tonight. Yeah.
No, no, no,
Yes,
no,
ma'am.
no,
Oh,
no.
yes. I have a few words for
Terrible.
I have a few words for go-go grandparent. Not
Oh
nice words.
gosh. No, indeed. That's terrible. It's so unacceptable.
But they paid for my ride to come home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but except for that, and today's his birthday. He's 2 years old today.
Very
Oh my
nice.
gosh.
He
Wow.
was specially picked for me.
Congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big
Waited
change for
four
both of
years
you.
for it. 4 years.
Wow.
You
Wow,
can,
wow. That's huge.
Lori, you can tell us all about the process after
I
when we
will.
do our chit
I'm
chat.
gonna go.
Yeah, love to hear that. Okay, let's go to Megan. Come on in, Megan.
That was awesome. When you said the word belting, you actually wrote a story about belting? Like about, historical belting, what it was like in Europe and all that stuff?
Yeah, so the title Beltane comes from the festival, which is in early May, the first May 2nd or May 1st or
Yes,
2nd. Yeah,
I
oh,
did
so
that
you know
too.
it. You
I
know
did
it.
that too, because and you told me, what that what Marguerite, the one with Marguerite, was that about melting or more about?
Yeah, so Marguerite would not have known necessarily about Beltane in France, but in Scotland, where she ends up living in the novel called Beltane, that's Beltane is
Oh,
still at that time. Beltane is still very much alive, and it's still alive today too as a
Yes,
festival, a spring early summer festival. So it's about sort of a spring celebration. There's often fires at night, big bonfires, and among the Celtic peoples, it's sort of
yes.
been a thing for a long time. Yeah, you're
And
obviously
I
familiar
worship
with
it
it.
too. I worship it too. Now, if
Oh,
this
lovely.
with Marguerite, I'm Wiccan as well.
Yeah, okay, great.
With Marguerite, the girl, the Princess Marguerite, she was a mother of Mary Queen of Scots, wasn't she? Or no?
No, so my character is a made up. She's an
Oh,
invented
Queen of
character.
Scotland, I thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, she's an invented character. But
I
in the sequel that I haven't written, but I have thought a lot about, my character Marguerite ends up being a lady in waiting to marry Queen of Scots. So you're on the right
Oh,
track. You're definitely
um,
following my imagination.
but also, when you said Beltane, what's the novel about Beltane about? What's it about? Like, what's it actually about?
It's
I wanna read it now.
Oh, it's available on Amazon. It's about Marguerite being she is put into an arranged marriage with someone in Scotland for various political and economic reasons that have nothing to do with her. But it's about her confronting things like the Protestant Reformation. So she's a
Oh,
Catholic. She feels good about that. She's very much interested
oh,
in Mary as her one of her role models, and so she has to deal with sort of what happens when she has to suddenly become loyal to this man who's essentially a stranger to her, and eventually con at least look like she's converting to Protestantism, which is a big deal, and I'll be honest, there's
mm.
lots of sex in it too. There's lots of sex in the
Oh,
book.
Mm.
In
so it's not a pagan thing. It's more like,
what well there's pagan elements for sure because they're still celebrating the old festivals of Beltane and Lammas and Candlemas. So there's very much a
ah,
paganism is very much alive, and there's some ritual in the book that is very much pagan, of pagan
mm.
origin, so pre-Christian. There's definitely elements of it in the story, and that's another thing that Marguerite sort
Oh,
of, as a
pre-Christian. It's not like
coming of
the,
age.
oh, okay. It's pre-Christian, like a pre-Christian, not Christianity. Like all of a sudden, it's like pre-Christian.
Yeah, so the pagan tradition was around before Christianity, and
Yeah.
elements of it survive. Of course, as you're a Wiccan, you know this. Elements of it are still alive today,
Earth,
and
air,
they,
fire, water. Yeah, yeah. I like that. I
yeah,
love.
so
I celebrate it too. Actually, I'm looking myself, and I
yeah.
always celebrate it. Always, always, always.
Yeah, beautiful. So those traditions definitely survived through Christianity, even through the worst of witch trials and
I
persecutions,
know.
and
Oh, that's a
many of the
hard thing about witch trial. I hate that one.
it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to study. Trust me. Yeah, as
Witch
it's a
trial
hard
is
thing to
the
study.
worst, man.
Yeah, but the
Innocent people be trying to learn what do their pagan rituals, and all of a sudden they're done. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And so it's about
oh,
resilience too. Like pagans, very resilient. People who want to worship in that way will always find a way to do it. And so that's one of the
yeah.
elements in the novel Beltane
Gosh.
also. So that story was a prequel for Beltane. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your
You,
question.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Megan. Christine, where did the inspirations come from when you write? Is it so we've had Dorothy Dietrich in the space before, who does the Tippy and Stan stories, and she just says to them that when Tippy and Stan start talking to her, she starts writing. So how does that
Mm.
process work for you? Do you have to sit down and think about the novel and then it comes to you, or are you like grocery shopping one day and you're like, oh, there it is, you know?
Yeah, no, they don't come suddenly. Mine are it's because I'm thinking about things like equity or inclusion or identity or uh, sexual identity or political identity or gender. How do we form those things? And so those ideas and those questions are usually at the root of my creativity. So in with a wider stream and Beltane, it was kind of questions of how does a woman, so spoiler alert, Lisa and Marguerite have a deeper relationship than is implied in the story. There's more going on there behind the scenes. And so I I just get wondering about what's the unwritten history of queer women, say? How did they exist without being persecuted? What did it mean to owe allegiance to a husband all of a sudden when maybe you don't even care about men? And
Yeah.
what is your sense of sexuality in a culture that teaches you that women are filth? And so for me, it starts with questions, and there are questions about humanity and human nature and how do we live and thrive under difficult conditions. And so those questions lead to a character, and say a character who's wondering some of the same things that I am. So it's usually bigger questions that sort of then trickle down into characters that develop. And looking into the future in Song Garden, it's kind of wondering what will this park, this urban park that's surrounded by big tall buildings, condo buildings and stuff now, what's this going to be like in 500 years? People need to survive, they need to eat, and so there'll be vertical gardens growing down the trained down these old crumbling tall buildings. And so it's always questions for me. It's questions and curiosity, and then they end up being fleshed out by my imagination into characters and plots. That's sort of how it works for me.
And then does that mean that you are working on multiple projects at the same time? Or do you, have a character and then you just roll with that specific character and question?
Yeah, I tend to roll with one set at a time, but once a character is in my mind, they're there in the way that an old friend is there in your mind. So there may be an old friend who maybe has died or who is not in your life anymore, but they live in your imagination and your memory and your mind. And so all the characters I've ever created they're still in there, and they're still thinking about their lives, and my imagination is still sort of poking around at what happens. And so in the Song Garden, I've thought out what's it going to be like when Pharrell gets to the boat, and is she going to take to life on the water, and what will that be like? How will she be accepted or not accepted? And so the stories don't grow concurrently in my mind necessarily. I'm usually sort of thinking about one project at a time. So at the moment, my creative interest is on Maria Theresia Paradis and Friedrich Dulan. So what stories will I build around what I've learned from my research about them? But all the other characters, they're still active in my memory, in my
Well, you
imagination.
always know that you're welcome to bring your characters here. We love listening
Yeah, thank you. They'd be
to your
welcome.
writing. So
They'd be welcome.
I think friends with that, because Christina's 3 hours in the future, we'll wish her a lovely evening. It's not good morning there, is it yet?
Thank you.
That was good. Thank you.
Close,
Thank
close
you.
to good morning. So
Always a pleasure. Yeah.
always a pleasure. And you're welcome back. at
How
any
long
time
did it take you
would
to
like.
write this?
Audio,
The first.
audio now on
Last
How long
question
did-
from Nancy.
space.
Oh,
Beep.
yeah. That's a really good question, because each story I spend months and months imagining, and so it's hard to answer. Once I sit down to write a short story, it might only be, a few days, but it's been
Okay.
percolating in my imagination maybe for months or maybe even years, and so it's hard to answer. But once it's all ready to come, it comes. A short story can come, in a few days, no problem. Yeah.
I love that.
So do you do that with the music too?
Thank you.
Music, yeah, music is a little more work for me to do, but if once I have an idea for a song, probably maybe a week. Yeah, a week or
Oh,
two.
wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nancy.
So sorry, Christine, but do you sing you said you do quite a bit of stuff in the subway in Toronto.
Mhm.
hmm
So do you sing these particular songs that you sang to us tonight, or that
That's a
you recorded
great
for us?
question. I do not. That's a really good question, though. I don't. I'm very particular about what I sing in the subway, because someone's walking by and they hear one line, and so
Uh,
the Lord has come, he's beating the drum. Like, that's not necessarily a great one-liner. And so
no,
also I
that's true.
tend to do cover songs, because honestly, I couldn't just pick up a guitar and sing one of my own songs, because I never do them. Like, I wrote them and I record them, but it's not like I start Apple Music and then listen to my own songs. And so the songs that I know best are other people's songs. And so at the holiday season, they're the ones that I write one each holiday season. And so those ones I do in the subway around Christmas time, but in the subway I'm generally doing other people's music.
I see. Yeah.
Plus, it's
The
the
boy drum one was really quite striking.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored to hear that, because I felt very close to that song. There's not enough songs about women's experience of
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
And there's so much to say. There's so much to say about it. And so thank you. Yeah.
Okay, friends, that'll be it for this evening. So we can let Christine humbly put her head down to bed.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for your attention. I'm going to log off. I feel honored to be here. Thank you all, and have a lovely evening.
Have a lovely evening,
Same.
Christine. Good night.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.